Yes, my friends, we have some news to share with you later this afternoon, and believe me, you're going to be shocked. Everything indicates that we'll have changes to the team, and we'll talk more about that soon. But first, I want to know if you're a die-hard Steelers fan. I want to ask you a question, and I want to see if you'll get it right. How many times have the Pittsburgh Steelers won the Super Bowl? 5 times, 6 times, or 4 times? Only the real ones will get it right. Subscribe to the channel to receive all the Steelers updates this season. So, without further ado, let's get started. The Pittsburgh Steelers have officially set their 53-man roster, and while some moves were expected, others left the entire Steelers nation in shock. Let's break this all down, because what we've just seen is not just about who made the team. It's about what it means for this squad moving forward, especially as we inch closer to Week 1. One of the biggest shocks came from the safety room. Chuck Clark, widely assumed to be a lock for the final roster, was released. And in his place, Diontae Kent. A rookie, yes, but also someone with a growing reputation for versatility. Still, no one was prepared to see Chuck Clark's name missing. The Steelers opted to keep only 3 safeties, Jalen Ramsey, Juan Thornhill, and Deshaun Elliott, with Miles Killebrew holding down the depth chart's 3rd spot. Killebrew is a special teams ace, but he's not a defensive snap guy. This raises real concerns about depth, especially with a safety like Kent, who has been managing injury concerns. Is he staying just to be put on IR later, or do the Steelers really believe he's ready to contribute? This move might hint at a greater role for Jalen Ramsey at safety, which opens another can of worms because his shift away from corner could weaken depth there too. If injuries hit this unit early, the ripple effect could be brutal. And what happens if Kent can't stay healthy? Then we're talking about a team relying heavily on versatility to mask some very real deficiencies.
And speaking of surprises, the wide receiver room has basically solidified into exactly what many feared it would. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and a handful of slot-centric guys like Scotty Miller. No true WR2. No outside threat to complement DK Metcalf. It's a thin group, and it's one injury away from full-on disaster. This wide receiver core screams unfinished. And it's not just the fans saying this. Inside the building, there's clearly still some debate, given that the team has been making calls around the league. According to Zachary Smith, the Steelers previously reached out to Tampa Bay to inquire about Trey Palmer. Palmer was surprisingly released by the Buccaneers, and he's now available. The Steelers showed interest once. Don't be surprised if they act again. Palmer offers elite speed and experience returning punts, attributes that make him a tempting option. He's not going to fix everything, but he might offer more depth on the outside than what the team currently has. Another name that came up is Malachi Corley, a favorite of many during the draft process and even nicknamed the YAC God for his after-catch ability in college. Corley was a 3rd-round pick recently let go by the Jets. His time with Aaron Rodgers ended badly, but it's hard to deny his raw talent. Unfortunately, his role would mirror that of Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson, a slot-heavy guy with limited outside upside. And that's a problem because this team is already overloaded with slot guys. So, while he's an exciting player, he might not be the right fit here. Then there's the speculation about Jacoby Myers. Reportedly, only one team called the Raiders about taking on Myers' 2025 contract. The Raiders are trying to offload that deal, and the way it's being handled screams Omar Khan, trying to get solid production for pennies on the dollar. Myers would be the ideal WR2, reliable, experienced, and capable of producing in an offense led by Aaron Rodgers. But will the Steelers pull the trigger? That's still unclear. The offensive line also had some shakeups. Andrus Peat made the final roster, which is a surprise considering how under the radar his camp was. Peat's sheer size is staggering. If you haven't seen him up close, imagine someone who looks like he belongs on a medieval battlefield instead of a football field. And yet, despite a rocky start, Mike Tomlin didn't even know his first name during his first press conference. Peat battled his way onto the 53. That alone says a lot about his work ethic and what the Steelers might envision for him in terms of depth and physicality. When we flip back to the quarterback room, Will Howard is headed to IR. The Steelers are rolling into the season with Aaron Rodgers and Skylar Thompson. The love for Thompson is still present, but how long will that last? If Thompson falters, Howard could be back as early as Week 4. But if Rodgers is healthy and producing, don't expect the team to risk disrupting chemistry by forcing Howard into the mix. His return entirely depends on how things go early in the season. Corey Trice is another name to watch. The corner starts the year on IR, and many believe this is his last chance to prove he can stay healthy. If he can get back on the field between weeks 5 and 8 and contribute, the Steelers may finally see the player they hoped could replace Darius Slay. If not, it could be the end of his time in Pittsburgh. They've invested time and patience into Trice, but that well of goodwill is almost dry. Which brings us to the most unexpected name in this conversation, Diontae Johnson. Yes, that Diontae Johnson. The same guy who once was the Steelers' top receiver. The same guy who's bounced between teams in the last 2 years with little to no playing time. But despite all the off-field drama and the questions about his desire or locker room presence on the field, just focusing on football, he still might be the perfect fit for this offense. If he's still got it, and that's a big if, Johnson offers something the Steelers desperately need: elite route running. There was a time not long ago when he was among the top in the league in that category. He knows how to get open. And Aaron Rodgers? He's elite at finding open receivers. The connection writes itself. Is he the same guy anymore? No one knows. He hasn't had real game reps in ages, and his name has popped up in negative headlines more often than stat sheets. But if there's even a sliver of potential, if he could give this team 500 to 600 yards as a number 2 option, you have to consider it, especially when the alternatives are cast-offs and projects who might never pan out. This is how far we've come. The wide receiver situation is so concerning that even the idea of a Diontae Johnson reunion, once unthinkable, is now being discussed as a real possibility. So the question is, should the Steelers take a shot at bringing back Diontae Johnson? Is it time to give him one last chance in the black and gold? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you're still with us, let's continue peeling back the layers of this massive Steelers roster shakeup and the ripple effects it could cause. Because here's the reality: when you assess the Steelers' current offensive weapons and project what they might look like deep into the season, it's hard not to feel a little uneasy. The team made the conscious decision not to pursue a big-name WR2 in free agency or via trade, at least not yet, and has instead chosen to roll with a group of unproven or undersized slot receivers. That speaks volumes about how they view their current personnel, but it also raises huge red flags. They've invested in Roman Wilson, who has tremendous upside. He's fast, runs sharp routes, and has flashed in camp, but he's not a WR2 yet, not by a long shot. And then there's Calvin Austin III, who, despite his dynamic speed, still hasn't shown the kind of consistency needed to carry the load opposite DK Metcalf. Scotty Miller? A depth piece at best. That's why the door remains wide open for an external addition, even a controversial one like Diontae Johnson. And if he doesn't pan out, or if the front office isn't willing to take that risk, then you circle right back to the trio of Trey Palmer, Malachi Corley, and maybe even a flyer on a guy like Hunter Renfrow. None of them scream fix. But at this stage, it's not about a star, it's about filling a void that could sink this offense if left unaddressed. And this is where Omar Khan's style becomes so fascinating. The Steelers GM has shown that he's not afraid to pick up the phone and call teams directly, trying to strike deals that make sense financially and schematically. The Jacoby Myers situation is a perfect example. He might not end up in Pittsburgh, but the idea that the Steelers were the lone team inquiring says something. Steelers fans, it's time to strap in, because what we've seen so far is just the opening act. The roster is set, but this story is far from over. Whether it's a surprise addition at wide receiver, or reshuffle in the secondary, or an unexpected comeback story, this team still has a few twists left in store. So make sure to subscribe, drop a like, and hit that notification bell, because the next big Steelers move, you'll hear it here first. And don't forget, click on the video that's now on your screen for more breaking Steelers news and exclusive analysis.